This episode is all about making videos in Yellowstone. Hi, I'm your host, Kirby Flanagan. Today's guest is Yellowstone wildlife photographer, Judy Lehmberg. Judy has spent the last 10 plus years photographing a variety of Yellowstone wildlife, and today she's going to tell us how she does it. Welcome, Judy.
Hi, thanks.
So how did you get started in wildlife photography?
It was kind of an evolution, I'd have to say. I back in college days majored in wildlife science. After I changed my major a half a dozen times, as people will do. But I ended out in wildlife science, didn't have a job when I graduated, found a job teaching high school, never thought I'd care anything about teaching, but loved it. And then decided to go back and get my master's degree in biology so I could teach in a college rather than a high school. And I did that for 30 something years and really enjoyed the whole time. But when I retired, I was looking for something to do. And my husband's always been in photography for like ever. And he started looking around for a camera and because I was really interested in video. And I bought a camera, tripod, all the accessories. And we went to Yellowstone and started filming.
And if I remember right, you started out with a red camera. So you started out top of the line there, huh?
I started out with the first red camera, which was, and I'll say this to any red person that works for anybody, it was the biggest beta release of something hard rather than, beta refers to software, obviously, but it did not have any kind of hard drive. You had to use like regular Lexar cards that you would use in a DSLR. It didn't have any pre-record, which is a wonderful thing for wildlife to hit a button and it goes into a 10 or so second loop of recording things before anything happens. And then you hit the button and it's recorded the previous 10 seconds of anything that happened. And it didn't have that. It didn't have a lot of things, but I bought it. But they must have realized that it was a beta release because when their second camera came along, the Epic 5, they gave everybody that bought the original camera the price of the original camera as a discount for the second camera, which is an amazing, I've never heard of any camera company doing what they did. So I got the second one, which was a really great camera, had all the little bells and whistles that I wanted. And that was 5K. The first one was 4K, the second was 5K. Then I upgraded the sensor to 6K. And then I wasn't going to do this, but the weapon came along a few years ago and it's 8K, which is ridiculous. I mean, nobody needs 8K unless they're doing an IMAX. But I bought into it because it has really good color. So I have the 8K weapon now.
And that's a red camera, I gather.
Yeah, they're all red.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they don't offer the discounts and stuff to the, the first adopters like they used to. But that's okay. I mean, I'm not getting a new one anytime soon. So
yeah, hopefully they're not going to try to go beyond 8K, which is, as you say, kind of.
Well, 8K is, like I said, unless you're doing an IMAX, what the heck, or some of those big installations that people put into hospitals or museums or, there they use some 8K, but, not that much in comparison to other formats. I mean, most movies are still made in 1080p.
Yeah.
So.
Overkill.
Yeah, right, exactly. But it's the one thing that you got to think about is if you're shooting in 8K, you can crop the living what out of, you can have some little bear that's pretty far distant and everybody thinks it's a waste of time. Wait for me to film it and then crop it to 2K and you won't think it's a waste of time.
Yeah. Okay. Good point.
Yeah.
So how hard was it to break into professional wildlife photography as a newcomer?
Actually, I would have to say it's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I've tried a lot of things and luckily been successful, but just unless you're in that group that has, I don't know, that knows people, it's really, really hard to break in. And I can't say that I even have when it comes to the, the big professional companies like Nat Geo and Discovery, and they don't know I exist and they don't care. I do things more with smaller companies and sometimes even individuals. I mean, I've got one coming up that's Nature, PBS Nature, but it's the guy that's actually making the movies that I'm working with, not PBS Nature. No, it varies. People find me in a really diverse variety of ways.
Yeah. Well, I had a similar experience. I decided I was going to be a professional photographer after I retired about 8 years ago now. And boy, I felt like I jumped into the deep end of the pool without a life jacket.
Well, there's so many people doing it, for one thing. I mean,
right.
Not so many people doing my stuff, but you're, still photography. God, you're just a little bitty tiny ant in a big anthill,
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So you spend 6 months of the year in Yellowstone, you were telling me, and obviously it's one of your favorite places. So why did you pick that as your place to be?
I've always liked Yellowstone. We used to spend a lot of time fly fishing, and it was always not necessarily in Yellowstone, although we did enjoy fishing in Yellowstone, but around, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming would be, and this being sarcastic to say this, but there's 3 reasons to be a teacher: June, July, and August. And I mean, I loved teaching. I enjoyed what I did, but I also loved being off in the summers. Sure. And for 27 years, we lived in a van down by whatever river the good hatches going on. And all over this whole entire area, and in Yellowstone too. But Yellowstone was kind of, I guess, the center of everything that we did, not just anyway, so we spent a lot of time up here, got used to spending a lot of time up here in the summer. And when we retired, realized that we didn't have to go home in the fall. So we just started spending more time up here and eventually found where we are now. We've been staying in the same spot for like 11 years now. Really, really lucky to have it. Super nice people. So we got lucky.
Yeah, you did. So, that whole area, frontwards and backwards, I guess, huh?
Yeah, pretty well.
So one of the challenges in Yellowstone is it's really big and hard to get around in. I mean, with 35-mile-an-hour speed limits. How do you find active shooting locations and beat the thundering herd to them?
Well, you don't usually beat the thundering herd. I mean, sometimes if you get lucky, you do. There's a network of my friends that, Yellowstone doesn't have all that great of phone reception, but you can usually get a text to go through. And we text each other when stuff is happening and find each other that way. Although, sometimes it can be 4 hours away from wherever it is you are. So right. You have to forget that. You kind of have to use your head about what you respond to and what you don't. And there's lots of days we miss stuff, and then there's days we get lucky and hit a few things. But I would have to say both knowing where animals are and my friends that find stuff are the 2, main ways that we find things.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely helps. Well, let's take a look at a couple of your Yellowstone videos. I'm going to share my screen and see if I can get that to work, which sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't, seems like.
In the spring of 2013, a male and female fox built a den in an unusual location, right above the Yellowstone picnic area on the north side of Yellowstone National Park. At first, no one noticed, but on May 23rd, 2 kits emerged, and the foxes suddenly had a big audience of people watching their every move. They became instant celebrities, and they didn't seem to mind the people a bit. Humans were an accepted part of their landscape. Both parents spent a lot of time away from the den hunting, especially the male. He was an efficient hunter. Even sagebrush didn't stop him. He usually got his prey, which was almost always ground squirrels. He gave most of the ground squirrels to the vixen. The vixen gave the kits ground squirrels as she began to wean them. The vixen takes a caged squirrel from her kit who wants to play with it. The vixen gets another, and a tug of war ensues. The vixen spent most of her time at the den guarding her 2 kits. She was a patient mom, even at the most trying of times. We watched the kits grow, feed, and drive their parents crazy for 9 days. They became a part of our lives. We learned to predict their movements, and we fell in love with them. When an adult was present, the kits were out of the den and playing. When Mom had been gone for a while, the babies rushed to nurse when she returned. We knew they had enemies. The most obvious was a raven. Mom was on constant lookout for him, but he still managed to steal the occasional leftovers. We were concerned they would move their den, but we never worried about what actually did happen. On the 9th day, the unthinkable happened. A badger showed up. The vixen fought hard, but the badger actually made it into the den with one of the kits. Mom was understandably upset. At one point, the badger came out, but only to fight again and then return to the den through one of their escape holes. The vixen frantically dug vigorously to evict the badger from her den. She was not successful. The male returned and tried to help. But then a kit appeared, totally unhurt and wondering what all the fuss was about. The kit seemed undisturbed and more interested in the bighorn sheep than the badger. It took us a minute to figure it out. We thought the badger had been down there killing the kit, but he had actually been eating their cache of ground squirrels. Now the kit was safe, but the badger was still in the den and the vixen wanted him out. The badger and the vixen again fought ferociously for the possession of the den. Badgers have few enemies since they are so aggressive. The vixen had more than met her match, especially without the male's help. Once again, the badger gained possession of the den. She spent hours trying to get him out without success. Sometime that night, she dug a new den about 30 yards west of her original den. The kits understood. They moved to the new den, staying in the den while their parents were gone, and out playing near it when Mom was home. The next day, towards mid-afternoon, the male left to go hunt. While he was out hunting, the vixen inexplicably left. She knew the badger was in her original den, but she left. We had never seen her leave the kits while the badger was there, but she did. The kits went into their new den. After she left, the badger came out of the original den and sniffed around, wary of the vixen. Feeling safe from the vixen, he trailed the kits to the new den. The old den had 3 exit holes. The new den, hastily dug, only had 1. When the female returned, she immediately realized her kits and the badger were in the same den, a den with only 1 exit hole. We all hoped for a second miracle, but after a few hours, we realized it probably wouldn't happen. She tried and tried, but she was unable to dislodge the badger. When the vixen brought out the remains of a kit, which she carefully buried, we knew it was over. We had fallen in love with those kits, who had willingly given us a glance at their lives. Several days later, the badger finally left the area. The adult foxes sniffed the kit's remains and then walked over the hill together. They have returned several times, but they don't stay. We will never forget them.
That's a great short film. I love that one.
Oh, good. Thank you. I got lucky.
So you must have had a really long lens to get that intimate detail.
You know, I can't tell you exactly which lens I was using at the time, but I'm pretty sure it was a 200 to 400 Nikon 200 to 400.
Oh.
Or it's 100 to 400. I haven't used that lens for a long time. It's 100 to 400. Yeah.
I didn't realize Red cameras would take Nikon lenses. That's what I shoot with.
They have 3 different thingies that you hang off the front where you screw the lens on, and they have one for Canon lenses, one for Nikon lenses, and one for PL mount lenses.
Okay.
So, yeah. And my husband has always been Nikon, so that's what I went to, just because he's got every lens known to man in Nikon,
Yeah, I do know. So I thought maybe you're using that famous Canon 50 to 1000, but
you know how much that Canon 50 to 1000 costs?
I do, yeah.
It's like $70-something thousand.
Yeah.
And Bob Landis has that lens, and a couple other people like Grizzly Creek have that lens, but I don't have that lens.
Yeah, I wouldn't have it either.
No, I wouldn't get one anytime soon either.
Yeah. So, judging by the number of photographers there, this was a pretty well-known event. Did you discover it early, or did you hear about all the fuss?
I did before they ever put the signs up, how far you can get to it and all that. And I can't remember exactly how. I mean, we just happened to be at the Yellowstone picnic area and saw the foxes appear. And they had to have been there all along, but it got to the point of the age of the babies that they started coming out of the den. And that's when, everybody started noticing them, is when they came out of the den.
Yeah.
So.
My only photos of foxes were taken just west of that area, and it was all happenstance. I just happened to be there looking at something else, and the fox came trotting out of the woods.
Yeah. Well, they don't hold still very well, do they?
No, they don't. Beautiful animals, though.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at another one of your photos, or your videos, that is. I was impressed that you were able to get shots of otters. Boy, they're hard to find. And
they haven't. For several years they were at Trout Lake, and they haven't been at Trout Lake since, I want to say, like 2015, maybe.
Oh.
I'm not sure exactly, but I don't know what's happened. But they're not there anymore. I mean, the first year I got 2 families of otters that they must have been like sisters or something, because they hung out together and all the babies played together. And I've got clips of like 7 babies all in one wad, all playing around with each other. It was neat.
So this looks like it was shot from above. Were you up on a hill or something? Or?
Yeah. Have you been to Trout Lake?
I'm not even sure I know where Trout Lake is.
It's in the upper east corner of the park as you're kind of sort of well, it's as you're heading towards Silvergate, but
Okay.
it's just past Round Prairie and well, it's just past Soda Butte Cone.
Okay. Okay.
And then you hike up. It's a pretty steep hike, but it's short, like a half a mile or something like that to get to the lake.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've done that hike actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're lucky, the otters are there and they come out, and you have to kind of gauge it because they come out for a couple hours and then they sleep, hide out someplace and sleep for a couple hours. But when they're out, they're having fun.
Yeah. I did a winter trip to the Lamar Valley and got some pictures of beaver there in Soda Creek, I guess it is. But I've never seen them there since.
But the otters hang out along the Lamar River in the wintertime too.
Yeah.
Right. I haven't been there in the winter, so I haven't seen them, but I have friends that have pictures of them.
Yeah, I've seen them, but from a long ways away, and
right.
I'm surprised you could get this close.
Yeah, these guys did not care. They were gotten so used to a lot of people at their lakes. They totally ignored us. It was like that we weren't even there. They caught fish, they played, they did everything otters do, and just totally ignored us.
So a lot of your videos have ambient sound in it. What did you record that with?
I have a, what is it, Audio Technica microphone, and I don't record that at the same time that I'm recording the video. I go back and get, natural sounds, like, well, it depends on what I want, but I use that microphone connected to that camera, which is not the best quality. It'd be better if I had separate, completely separate audio system, but I've never just done that. I've just done the Audio Technica mic. And so that's good enough.
One more thing to haul around, huh?
Yeah. And I don't like, I want to have that camera handy in case something happens,
Right. I did a really good job of editing the sound in. It's hard to tell it wasn't taken at the same time.
Yeah, it's hard for me to do sound at the same time. I mean, every once in a while, like during the bison rut, if there's not too many cars, but usually almost always there's too many cars to be able to do anything.
Yeah. Well, let's see here. So we were talking earlier about who you shoot for. Tell the audience how you sell your videos commercially.
Well, of course, on YouTube is one place. The rest, I don't really sell the whole entire video. I sell film clips normally. And that's through a company called Nature Footage. And then there's a new company in South Korea called Keystock. And then the one I guess I've been with the longest is Mammoth HD. And they, as their name implies, specialize in the really high resolution, 6K, 8K type stuff. And people contact them for what they need footage wise. And if I happen to have something that meets their requirements, then they sell my footage through them and take, a cut of it.
Sure.
That's kind of the most, I guess you'd say, most mundane thing I do. But I have had, several different Nat Geo and Grizzly Creek films, and a couple of PBS where I've just had film clips that they used, what they refer to as stock footage.
Yeah. Okay. And how do you edit and post-process your videos?
Post-process?
Yeah.
I do a couple things, but the main thing is there's a piece of software that the camera company, came up with called Cine. And it's kind of the Photoshop of Red footage. And that's where I do most of my color adjustment. I can change ISO. I can change all kinds of stuff in that software, and then export it, and then use it in like Final Cut Pro to put a video together.
Okay.
But I like to do the color correction in Cine because it just has a finer control over all of that stuff.
How long does that take you to do these 5-minute videos?
Ooh, that's a hard question to answer. It depends on the complexity, but at least several days.
Wow. Always takes me several hours just to edit these short videos that I do. So I can only imagine.
Yeah, just deciding which clips I want to use. I can spend forever doing that.
Yeah.
And I generally just throw in everything I can find that has to do with that subject, and then start a process of elimination, which is not the smartest way to do it, but it makes me feel better to know that I've got everything in there that I could possibly put in there.
So do you start shooting with a story in mind, or is that what you develop?
Absolutely not.
No.
I start shooting when anything semi-interesting looks like it's happening. And then hope I can, once I get something, then I hope I can add enough to that to actually make a story.
Sure.
But at the very beginning, you got to be flexible.
Yeah, makes sense. So you mentioned using Red cameras. What attracted you to those?
Actually, the main thing that attracted me is that my husband started looking for a camera for me. He said, "You want this one?" That was it. End of story.
Nice husband.
Yeah. He was on a mission, I told him, find me the one that I want. I don't know. And yeah, he found it.
Nothing like starting at the high end.
Well, and what our thought on that is, when you start it'll say a new hobby, you start usually like on the low end. Let's say fly fishing. You go out and buy some cheap rod and a cheap reel, and a year later you realize you want something better.
Right.
And so we wanted to try to avoid that. And once he realized that my commitment to the whole thing was real, that was really the main strategy on that was. And also, I have to say, we were very, very lucky. Our house is in Texas, and they were in the process of putting a pipeline through our land. We have 5.5 acres. And my husband said, "Okay, you deal with those oil guys and you get whatever money you can get out of them. And that's what you're going to use to spend for your camera." So I figured out what they want, what the oil guys wanted, and there's no way you can stop them, period. Especially in Texas, you cannot stop an oil company. So my strategy was, okay, no, stop them, just get them to pay me as much as possible. And they paid me almost to the penny what I needed to spend for that camera. So I got
nice.
Lucky. Yeah, in that sense, I got lucky.
Yeah, okay. So sounds like you use a variety of lenses, and you're using Nikon lenses on the Red, I guess.
Yeah. Now the main lens I use is a 200 to 500. which is a cheap lens, but it's a really good quality lens. I mean, to me, it's really surprising that's as good quality as. I mean, you can use a teleconverter with it and not even know that a teleconverter's attached to it. Most of the time, I don't have one attached, but I can. And I love that lens.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm surprised that works as well as it obviously does. Doesn't have the best reputation, I guess I would have to say.
Yeah, and like I said, it's only like a $15 or so $100 lens, and for Nikon and Canon, that's relatively cheap. But give it a try. That image stabilization on that lens is some of the best image stabilization I've ever seen on any lens I've ever used. Oh. And that's one of the things I really like about it.
Sure. Yeah. Good to know. So where do you see yourself going forward the next few years?
I don't know. We're going to Africa at the beginning of September for a couple of weeks to the Masai Mara and filming, obviously, African wildlife. And after that, Bosque del Apache. And we really haven't planned that much after that. I don't know. Just kind of wait and see what happens.
Yeah. What part of Africa?
Kenya.
Okay. All right. You said Masai Mara.
Yeah.
You shot a lot in the Kruger National Park,
yeah,
too.
I used to live in South Africa, so I'm really comfortable, like going to South Africa, renting a car and just driving around and doing what I want to do, and so we can do South Africa pretty cheap and stay there for a long time for a relatively small amount of money. Rental car and a place to stay at night and groceries, and that's about it, Nice. And if you make reservations long enough ahead of time in like Kruger National Park, that park is amazing. You compare it to Yellowstone, and there's like almost no comparison as far as how much you're going to see on an hour-to-hour basis in that park versus versus Yellowstone. Yellowstone is just like almost nothing in comparison to Kruger. In fact, a long time ago, my step-grandfather came to the United States for the first time to visit his daughter and my father. And they took him to Yellowstone. And afterwards, he said, "So where's all the wildlife?" And we said, "Well, you saw the bison and you saw the moose and you saw the elk and you saw the mule deer. And that's it. There's not anymore." And he was expecting more. I mean, obviously there's bears and wolves, but you don't always see them. Yeah, in Africa, there's so much more to film. I fill cards up at least 3 times faster there than I do here.
So in the Masai Mara, you're shooting from a vehicle. Is that the same in Kruger?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a pain, but I can do it.
Yeah. You don't have any choice, I suppose. Huh?
You don't have any choice. That's exactly right. But in those safari vehicles that they have in Kenya, I can set up a tripod. And it's not pretty the way it's arranged because I got to have one leg sticking in the seat and 2 legs on the floor, but it works. And then in South Africa, I had a metal thing he made that hangs on the door, and I can take the head off my tripod and put the head and the camera on this metal support thing that sticks out the window. And that's really handy. But you can't do that on a safari vehicle because they don't have regular windows.
Okay. Well, before we go, where can people find you and your work and everything you do?
YouTube, I guess. Epic Nature is the name of my channel.
Okay.
And that's the main way. And then other than that, through Nature Footage and Keystock and Mammoth HD.
Okay. Well, I'll put links to those in the show notes so everybody can find you. Thanks for being on Photographing the West, Judy. It's been a lot of fun talking to you, and you've had an interesting life all the way around, especially the last 10 plus years, huh?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, you bet. So each episode is published on the 15th and 30th of the month. If you enjoy these episodes, please subscribe and tell your friends about us. Bye for now, and we'll see you again on August 30th with Sebastian Ketterknecht, a conservation photographer who has traveled the world to photograph cats of all sizes, but especially wildcats. Bye, and we'll talk soon.